Okay, everybody, now we are going to work on smoothing a pinch pot. For every project that you use a pinch pot for, you're not necessarily going to need to smooth it. But for this particular first assignment, or for other times you might want to, this is going to be the method of smoothing. Now this pinch pot right here is where most people would stop with a pinch pot, like you did probably in elementary, middle school. But we're going to go a step further, 2 steps further. We're going to use this tool called a metal rib, like ribs. This tool is used for smoothing the outside of your pinch pot. You can see it's flexible. And we're going to be using the rounded side against our project. What we want to do is take this tool, hold it in our dominant hand, on top of my 4 fingers, the thumb on top, just so I have nice control. And I'm going to pull up on my project. But you can see here, like just pulling up on it, not really going to do much. What we want to do is support the other side as we do this. So I'm going to put my hand on this side and pull up, pushing against my hand, starting at that bottom, dragging it up. Not like this, at a slight angle. And you can see, look how nice and smooth that is. It's going to make the top really weird, but we'll get to that. But first goal, let's go all the way around the outside. I'm going to do this quick so we can get to the next step. Should have had some of those pre-made pinch pots ready for the next step, but you should watch how I do this. You can see I'm using that hand on the inside to kind of rotate it. Normally we could use a banding wheel in school, but we're not quite sure what's going to happen with that yet. This can be done at home or in school. You can see I'm going all the way around. And now the outside is nice and smooth. I do not want to see fingerprints. I should not see fingerprint dents like that all the way around. That you need to get rid of. If it's being stubborn, put 1 finger directly behind it and then go over it with the metal rib. All right, so we smooth the outside. Now we need to smooth the inside. You can imagine the metal rib's really not going to fit in there that well. So what we want to do is take the rib, put it up and down. We're going to place that inside the pinch pot like that, curved side facing the clay. What we're going to do is, while it's on the inside, we're going to pull towards yourself against your hand to smooth the inside. This is going to take off more clay. Be careful you don't make your project too thin during this step. Again, if you notice it's being too thin, super wobbly, you have to restart it, which is not, again, not a big deal. So I'm going to pull that clay towards me. Right now, mine's getting a little on the thin side, so I'm not going to pull too hard. Because in the next step, we can help to smooth out the sides without taking off as much clay. Okay? Do that, and we get clay off of that. Now, we can't get quite to the bottom yet, but you can see there's like lines from the clay itself in there from using the rib. We're going to get rid of that in the next step. So I can peel my clay off, my rib to the side. So we're done with that. Any scrap clay you have, put in your clay bag. So now, we got to fix that. Crummy. I'm going to take a sponge. I'm going to dunk it in water. That does not mean flood your project. If you use too much water, you will destroy your project. Okay? You want to make sure, squeezing out the water, that you are barely using any. I'm going to take that sponge, dip it in, squeeze it out gently. You can see it's not dripping, it's barely wet. I'm going to take this sponge and place it on the inside. Hand always supporting the opposite. And I'm going to drag this sponge around, pushing with my fingers to smooth it out. I'm going to start in a circular motion at the bottom. Let me show you. It's already getting nicer. Again, do not use a lot of water. You can see my hand is really at that base there where I'm pushing. Because if I don't have it there, you're going to do something called, what I call blarping out the side. You're going to push so hard that that outside gets too stretched out. Clay loves to stretch. It does not like to go back to where it was. It expands. It does not contract. Now I have a thin spot happening down here. You can see it's kind of funky there. So I can kind of push that back out so it matches the rest. But again, it's a thin spot. Gotta be careful because the clay starts to collapse on itself where that spot's thin. You can see the bottom is looking a lot nicer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that sponge, run it all up the inside. I can go in that circular motion, same way I did with the rib, and I can bring it up as well. Thin spot's doing me in here. A little rusty. It's only been like 6 months. Okay, so your inside's pretty smooth now. You notice a crack showed up there. I'll get rid of that real quick with my metal rib here. Bye-bye. Okay. Okay. So now we have this smoothed with the metal rib and the sponge. We're going to do one once-over smoothing before we're all done here. So now we are at the step of trimming. That top of that pot's a hot mess. We need to fix that. Let's see. Messy. So we're going to put our pot down. Preferably, I'd like you guys to use these guys, but I don't have enough to go around, so you can use this. You can also use a butter knife at home too. Butter knives are a little tricky though because they're so smooth and shiny that they kind of get stuck to the clay. If you notice during this step that your clay is like really, really flimsy and it's hard to cut, you can take it to a hairdryer for about 3 minutes and kind of stiffen this up a little bit, and it'll be a lot easier to trim. Now, this is one part people hate the most when they try to trim. You have to get eye level with it. So let's see how low the floor is here. Am I still in the picture? We'll find out later. Yes, I'm on the floor. It happens a lot. That's because this table's really tall. Normally you could just crouch next to it. What I'm going to do is take my thumb, using my carving tool. Everybody's going to get one of these. I'm going to be careful. I'm going to use one of this pointy side this way. Use it horizontally. What I'm going to do is place it on the shortest spot, and I'm going to trim it. Normally you shouldn't put a knife towards yourself, but because we are going so carefully with this, it's okay, because we're really just kind of going around. What I want to do is wherever I'm cutting this, if I have my thumb right underneath it like that, okay, that way it's supporting the wall as I'm cutting. Okay, no more crouch, not on the floor. So I'm going to trim, kind of turning the pot as you go along, all the way across. Now, you're not only going to trim once, but do not trim off too much at once. If you do, you won't really have a pot anymore. You'll have a bowl, and that's not the goal here. Here's your excess. Peel that off. Put that with the other clay that you have in the bag. Now, this is what I call rough trim. Your rough trim is going to show you all your imperfections with pinching. So what we want to do is kind of clean that up a little bit. To do that, I'm going to dip my fingers in water. My first 3. I'm going to put my thumb on the inside. I'm going to gently pinch and drag my thumb and fingers across this wall, putting gentle pressure on it wherever it's too thick and blending it wherever it's thin. That way we're getting the wall to look similar all the way around without having to repinch the whole project. Now, some spots are really a lot thinner than others. Again, you might need to start over. But don't worry too much about it. Okay, so inevitably when you do that, it's not going to be even again. But you can see it's a lot better here. So now we're going to do our clean trim. Remember, only a little bit at a time. And right now this is getting super flimsy. I would normally go hair dry it, but time. So I'm just going to take this very carefully, stop occasionally. See if pull that clay off the tool. Okay, a little bit at a time. You're going to see that it's going to get stuck a lot more because it's a little too wet. It's fairly level. Now it's going to be a bit better. We're going to take a sponge now. Once it's all trimmed, once it's all even thickness, we're then ready for the final smoothing. And then we're going to let it dry. So what I'm going to do is take my sponge around this edge here and wrap it. Wrap it, and I'm going to, again, supporting my project. I'm just dragging the sponge along. You can see I smoothed this part, not this one. Looks a lot nicer. Pick up my pot, rotate it a bit. Try not to drag your pot around too much. Again, pots love to stretch. They do not like to go back. Going all around this top edge here. You can see how much nicer that's looking. Now I'm going to turn it over real quick. Gently smooth my bottom. Okay. While you're down here, use your carving tool. You're going to put your initials and the class number you're in. Okay. Emily Mara Ackerman, number 1. That works for me. Put it down. And touch up your edge a little bit. And you're going to give it one little final smooth on everything else. You're always going to have some like little fingerprints, like gentle fingerprints, I call them. But you don't want fingerprint dents. We don't want that. Okay? The smoother your surface, the easier it is to do different surface techniques on it. Now, again, wobbly, a little bit uneven because I didn't hair dry it, but I can make it more even later once I'm not recording it. But you can see it's pretty good. Now, when you're done with these steps, you're going to let it dry. So you want to find a place for it, and you're going to kind of leave it in the shape you want it to dry in. If I put it down to dry like this, it's going to dry like that, and it won't be circular. If you wanted to, you could change the shape. That's up to you. But I think for the first assignment, it's good to keep it round. Okay? That is smoothing and trimming a pinch pot. On to the next.